Welcome everyone, Dylan Gemelli here today with a brand new video for you. And today's video, we are going to do a full, complete breakdown on how to run your very first steroid cycle. We're going to go through absolutely everything, so be prepared. I'm going to try to do it as slow as I can, but you know, when I start flowing, I get going, and I'm going to try to use as easy a terminology as I can. You know, because I realize that everybody's learning and new to this, and oftentimes when we're teaching, we just expect everybody to know things, and there's probably going to be terms you don't understand if you're brand new, but, you know, that's why there's forums, emails, we can ask questions. I try to answer everybody. You can leave comments with good questions. Just please don't ask where to buy steroids and things like that. That is just not suitable for YouTube, and it's just not something I want to deal with. That's not why I'm here, but I am here to teach you and keep everybody safe. But before we get into that, just a big shout out and thank you to everybody out there supporting the channel. I cannot thank you all enough. Just the support is amazing. If you haven't yet, please like, share, sub. It truly helps the channel to grow. Now, today's video is sponsored by Aura. Now, Aura is the ultimate, and I mean the ultimate when it comes to identity theft and credit monitoring. What do you actually get with an Aura membership? You're going to get 3 bureau credit monitoring and identity theft protection with alerts. You're going to get password protection, antivirus software. You're going to be protected fully. You're going to have a secure VPN, parental controls, 24 hours a day and 7 days a week, US-based customer support. It is absolutely amazing. Now listen, the FBI put out a report recently. There was a 64% increase in financial loss due to digital crime. Absolutely ridiculous. So you have to protect yourself. All of these plans come with a $1 million Aura identity theft insurance policy. You can get individual, couple, and family plans. They start as low as $12 a month, and you can put up to 5 people on each plan. So if you check the link below, you're going to find, or the description below, you'll find my link to get a 14-day free trial. So go check it out. Now, we've got a lot to cover today. Let me just immediately apologize if you see any glare in the background. I normally never have the TV on, but I'm watching the Bucks and the Nets up here. So if I glance up or something, or you see it in the background, avid sports fan. So just an apology up front if that, you probably won't notice it, but I can kind of tell. So look. First cycle, we're going to run down the things that need to be addressed, and I'm going to try to keep them in as chronological order as I can. So, number 1, the very most important thing is to find out if you should even be using steroids or are ready for them. Now, I can't say that you should be to anybody unless you medically need it for, you know, TRT, low testosterone, things that, you know, like that. But just a few guidelines that I would like to give you, food for thought. 1, your age. I personally, and you're going to have some differentiating opinions on this. This is like one of those things in politics where it's like, this is one that everybody wants to fight over. If you're under 25, I won't even consider it. I won't take people's money that want me to coach them. None of that. If you want me to be honest, once you get into your later 20s, earlier 30s, that's when it's the safest, when you know your body is fully developed, you're at the position that you need to be, where it's not going to potentially affect certain aspects of life negatively that it will by using them when you're not fully developed or ready. I will throw the number 25 out there for people. Just know that I don't endorse or condone that. I just gave you the reasoning why. And then I will get this, but my blood work came out okay, but so-and-so did this. And then you find a couple years down the road, people dropping like flies or having nothing but continuous problems. You will be fine right now, chances are. That does not, and I repeat, does not have anything to do with your future, which is what I am talking about and looking for you. I'm thinking long-term, and look, I'm going to be honest with you. I preach this long-term thing. It took me a long time to start thinking long-term. I preach it because I'm so regretful for being such an ass so many years and not thinking long-term. And part of that is selfishness. Part of that is, you know, not being married, not having kids, not having these responsibilities. Once you have these things, especially, and some people are just like that in general, and that is amazing, and I love that. But, you start getting these responsibilities, you start getting these things, you think long term, right? Well, you should really be thinking long term about your health, not only for yourself, but when you're potentially married, or if you have a girlfriend or boyfriend or whatever the case may be right now. Think about your kids later. Think about others aside from yourself, even while you are thinking about yourself. And that should make it even more of an easier decision. Some people look, you're going to do whatever the hell you want. You might listen to this video and think I'm just a moron and I'm an asshole and dictator, whatever I've heard people tell me whatever. Look, like I tell you, if you've watched me a lot, I'm not your fucking dad. I'm only trying to help you and guide you the safe and proper way. So that right there is number one, your age. I personally am not going to recommend under 28 generally, but I'll throw 25 out there. If you're under 25, please don't. I mean, you're going to do whatever, but just please don't, because you're just going to wreck yourself later. You really, really are. And you don't understand because things aren't as important to you at that time, and you think and you just don't know. You don't know. There's so many things. Number two is your overall condition. That's determined by, one, you always want to do pre-cycle blood work, mid-cycle blood work, and post-cycle blood work. The pre-cycle, you need a baseline to see what kind of condition you're in to start, and that's going to tell you if you are in good enough condition to start, but you need to have something to compare back to as the cycle goes on to learn your body's response to these compounds. If you don't, and you just wing it on, I feel this or I feel that, just because you feel does not mean anything. You could feel a certain thing and you pull your numbers up and you're a mess, because not everybody gets every single symptom. But you could be just abusing and wrecking yourself. So the blood work is imperative. So you're going to do pre-cycle blood work, mid-cycle, and post. That's going to help you determine if you're in the right kind of condition or not, in physical, shape and condition. The other aspect of that is your body fat. The higher your body fat, the more susceptible you are to side effects, and the more likelihood you're going to have nothing but problems. So when you have a higher body fat, there's a higher rate of estrogen conversion. That's number one. Number two, let's say you're running an oral steroid and you already are at a higher body fat. And I've seen people at higher body fats with perfectly good cholesterol and perfectly good numbers. But just understand, the higher your body fat, when you start having problems in these areas like with cholesterol and things, which is definitely going to happen with steroid use, it's going to be a lot worse for you and more severe being in bad condition. It's never. Steroids are not there to help you magically get into condition. Steroids are there to help you get over your natural barriers. Everybody's got a certain point that they get to where they just can't grow anymore on their own. Some people just have way better genetics than others. It's just like basketball players that you see that are 6'9", 7 foot, and they're just, that automatically gives them a head up. Now, obviously, there's way more to it, but somebody that can naturally get more size already has a head up on most of us, so that's just how it works. You do not reach your peak in a year or two of training. It takes long, and it takes you going through everything from tweaking diets to changing workout routine. I mean, it takes so many years. Your body's not fully developed in your early 20s. I get people telling me, I've reached my peak, I'm 22, I've been working out a year or two, and I'm just like, please, people, you're gonna wreck yourself. You don't get it. And I try to explain and help, and some people get mad at me, and some people go, okay, that makes total sense. I don't get anything out of some of these. Some people think that I'm like, I don't get anything out of telling you don't do this or that, except for peace of mind and knowing that I'm actually doing something good and helping people potentially not hurt themselves. And one of the reasons is because so many clients that I have are in their 40s and 50s. Same story. Just wrecked on TRT, nothing but problems, wishing they had never used steroids so young or misused them, etc. So what I tell you is to prevent you from going through all of these things that I have to see. And it does over time. It makes me sick to my stomach because I feel terrible for people. And it sucks. I love being the one that can potentially help them. But there are people that you have to go, you know what? There's just nothing, because they're just so wrecked. So I'm trying to prevent that. So, okay, we've got your conditioning. I tell people under 15%, that's a general rule of thumb. I prefer you to be closer in that 12 to 13 range. It just shows you to be in better overall condition and shape, and you're really getting to levels where for some people, it's hard for them to get sub 10. I know for me, to keep where I'm at, it is just the daily grind. It's such, and some people can do it a lot easier than others. I'm not one of those. It takes a lot out of me, both diet and cardio training, workout, etc. So everybody's different. You'll learn that. So okay, we've got the conditioning part down. Now it's like selecting your compound. Well, there's several compounds you would never run on a first cycle. I would urge you to go watch my videos that talk about steroids for beginners and steroids you should never do early on. But your tren, number one. I see so many people want to use tren on the first cycle. Please don't do that. Look, you have to let your body adjust to such an outside stimulus, and you have to learn your body response. If you're running the harshest steroid ever, you'll never learn how your body takes, the compounds in general, because tren is so harsh, you're automatically going to think it's just wrecking you, because it wrecks everybody for the most part, or at least does a lot of damage. You can't do that to yourself. Introduce yourself to just testosterone first. If you're dead set on running oral-only cycles, go for it. I don't like that for several reasons. I don't like the recovery on oral steroids or the keepability of gains, how you end up feeling. And with testosterone, it's just a lot different. But hey, I've seen plenty of people do well on oral-only cycles and keep gains. It's not ideal. It's not what I would do on a first cycle. I would just run testosterone on a first cycle, like 350 milligrams a week. There's no reason on the planet Earth to overdo it and start running 500 mil. You don't get a good gauge on how estrogen prone you may or not be just jumping in at 500 milligrams. Watch my video on the 500 milligram testosterone rule, and you'll understand where I'm coming from, how that is just so mythical and nonsensical and just BS. Some of the top minds on YouTube, I'm not going to throw out names. You could easily have seen their videos if you watch them, and I'm sure many of you do. We'll stand by those lower doses, and especially with test and things like that. I've seen them talk about it several times, and I've been talking about it forever and just getting the shit bashed out of me by meatheads, but then I get so much love from people that actually do it and find out that it is helpful and you can still make the gains. When your first cycle especially, keep it moderate, 300 to 350 milligrams a week. At least if you're dead ass set on 500, at least start with the lower dose for, a few weeks. You're running a 12-week cycle with a long ester of test anyway. So give it 3 or 4 weeks and start slow and ease up and into it. Or at least do it until you get mid-cycle and test your blood work and see how estrogen is responding to what you're doing. So you picked out your compound. Now, you need to get every single thing on hand that you need for your cycle and your post-cycle. Do not, and I repeat, do not. This is like one of the golden rules. Don't start a cycle without having everything on hand and planned out. Just don't do it. If any sort of thing pops up and you can't get this or that or whatever the case, or you're out of it, you could make things a lot worse. You could ruin your cycle. You could hurt yourself. Just don't. Just have every single thing on hand. So what do we need on hand? So with testosterone, which converts to estrogen, you need an aromatase inhibitor at least on hand. You want Aromacin or Arimidex. I would say go with Aromacin on a first cycle, but either one's going to suffice. There's certain numbers I can give you to tell you to start the dosing with, and that will kind of determine how it's affecting you. With the 350 milligram dose of testosterone, it's not high, but it's not like crazy low. There's a decent amount of estrogen conversion there. I would start 0.5 milligrams every other day of Arimidex or 12.5 milligrams every other day of Aromacin. If you feel, and this is fine, if you want to half that dose, because it's not an absorbently high dose. I don't have a big issue with people going 0.25 milligrams of Arimidex every other day and 6.25 milligrams of Aromacin every other day. And that's like half the standard type of dose, but you're running a little bit more moderate dose of testosterone. So you could start there. I don't and it's impossible to guess. I don't see that crushing most people's estrogen. There's few people out there that just never need an AI and it will just drop their estrogen. And that's possible, but it's trial and error, and it won't be so drastic with lower doses of everything. And it may not be enough, but I don't see, and you'll notice if you start getting symptoms, then you don't have enough of your aromatase inhibitor, or you don't have a good product, which is also possible. We're going to talk about in a second, but let's just block that out of our mind and say you do have a good product. Well, if you start to see that you're having some sort of side effects pop up, some water retention, some puffy nipples or itchy or painful, we know we need to up the dose of the aromatase inhibitor. And then at 6 weeks, when you get blood work done, you're going to see, oh, okay, well, I'm in great range here, so I'm going to bump my test up to 500, and I'm going to probably bump my aromatase inhibitor dose up to where, the 12.5 milligrams every other day of Aromacin or the 0.5 milligrams every other day of Arimidex to accommodate that increase in the dose. Or you could, if you feel like, hey, my estrogen is kind of low, it's like lower 20s, whatever, I'm gonna try to bump it to 500 test and keep the dose the same. You could do that, test it out, and kind of see from there. That's up to you. But you'll potentially see how you are pre-cycle as opposed to mid-cycle and be able to compare the numbers and see how your overall response is and how things are affecting you. So you be good there. Now, aside from that, you're not running a toxic oral steroid, so there's really not a need for an all-in-one protectant like you would with an oral. I always use the all-in-one protectants, and they're just a nice setup of herbs and different like CoQ10, for example, for your heart, and you'll often see TUDCA in there for your liver, but then there'll be several other things that are protecting your liver, your blood pressure, your kidneys. They'll often be, vitamin A, B in some of these, some of the more bigger enhanced ones, but you want to protect yourself. And so I like to use, I'm not saying that you have to do that. I'm just saying, just looking out for you, it wouldn't hurt you at all. But that is completely up to you. Just understand that it's more than just the liver that you're going to want to protect, your blood pressure, your cholesterol, things like that. So, but those all-in-one protectants will help. And there's several. If you just type in all-in-one cycle protection, you're going to get a bunch of hits and things like that, because there's so many out there. I know people are going to ask, and it's like, well, here's a list of some top ones, but you can easily just pull them up and find them on cycle support, things like that. They're everywhere. But you can ask, and if you want an opinion or whatever, I got plenty. So just let me know. And then, okay, so then this is where it gets a little controversial. I am not a big fan of HCG, but it does have a purpose. I never, ever, 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 ever recommend using HCG and PCT. I've never made that a secret. However, HCG is good to take while going into PCT. HCG is really suppressive. It's mimicking your LH and your FSH, just like when you take testosterone. It's mimicking the testosterone production, and by doing that, you start producing overabundance. So your body doesn't think you need to produce it anymore. It stops producing it, right? Same thing happens with HCG. You don't want that in PCT. It's suppressive and it increases estrogen. But by mimicking your LH and your FSH, just like testosterone when you're using it, it's going to juice up your numbers, which is great heading into PCT, and then you can then start your PCT and then keep those numbers on the rise, as opposed to just going in there, which you bottom out with testosterone use. So keep that in mind. If you don't want to use HCG, oh, by the way, overuse of HCG is tremendous. Look, HCG, last 4 weeks of your cycle, right up until PCT starts. So if you're running a 12-week cycle of testosterone, you're on 12 weeks. Weeks 13 and weeks 14, you're not injecting testosterone, but you're not starting your PCT because you're letting the esters clear out of your body. And then so that's weeks 13 and 14, then you would start PCT week 15. So by looking at those numbers, if you're starting PCT week 15, the 4 weeks prior to week 15 would be weeks 11, 12, 13, and 14. So weeks 11 through 14, you would use HCG, and then week 15, you would start PCT. You do not want to overuse HCG. 1,000 IUs a week is more than enough. Split that into 2 doses. 500, 500, that's it. That's all you need twice a week. So please don't overuse it. If you don't want to use HCG, I would still use a good testosterone booster. It's not going to do the same as HCG at all, but it'll still be helpful. How much, I can't say. It's not going to be the same as using HCG. It's just another aid that will, help you going into PCT. But, if you want to do HCG, use it that way. Now, this video will be way too long if I redo the whole perfect PCT video that I did. I have a video. It's called The Perfect Post-Cycle Therapy. I would encourage you all to please go watch that video. It fully explains everything about PCT. Everything possible that I've ever preached, it breaks it all down. When you're in, and I'm just going to give you a quick rundown. When you're in PCT, there's a lot to address. All right. The obvious is fixing your natural testosterone production, getting it going again. That is the most obvious. But that is not all that is a part of PCT, and why I see so many failures in PCT with losses of gains and bad recoveries is because everything is not addressed. When you are in PCT, one of the main reasons people lose gains and have so many problems recovering is because of the huge possible spike in cortisol. That's the gains killer. We know that, and if you don't, now you do, that cortisol is your brutal enemy in PCT. It's going to put you into a catabolic state, and that's not going to allow you to build muscle. And at the same time, it's going to eat away, all right, your muscle. And you're probably going to get unwanted fat gain, and that's going to help you lose muscles as well. So you've got to address that. That's why I've recommended, the GW 501, 516, for example, because it helps with all of this. It helps with cortisol. There's other things you're going to have probably need some healing, whether it's one of the things that I always run into. When you're on cycle, your strength goes up so much and you start to get these aches and pains, the tendonitis, the flaring up, the inflammation. That's MK2866, and I've talked about this. It's not suppressive when only used 4 weeks, and it helps with the cortisol, it helps with the healing, it helps with the recovery. It keeps you going in PCT with strength. You just have to keep it at 4 weeks or under. If you're running a longer PCT, you can only use it 4 weeks. If you start using it longer than that, that's when you're going to start to see the suppression. I recommend using the all-in-one protectants in PCT because there's toxicity builds up. It doesn't have to be with an oral steroid use. And it really helps. When you have those problems going into PCT, it hinders your recovery. So you need to address those problems. And then the aromacin is part of PCT for a few reasons. The increase in the IGF-1 production, which is obviously, well, I shouldn't say obviously, but some of you that don't know, it's huge for recovery. Okay? Gynecomastia rebound, where Arimidex is not going to help with that. So that's another aspect of it that you want to look at. You just don't want to overdo it in PCT either. So you're going to have to adjust your dose, possibly lower, depending upon what, how big of a cycle you ran and how much estrogen conversion was present, which you'll determine through blood work. But, probably be able to run a lower dose than you did with it on cycle, but I would still keep it as part of the PCT. And then Clomid and Novadex, which I've covered and I have Aromacin. I've covered all of these in singular videos, so I encourage you to go watch them. Go watch the PCT video, but you're going to want at least a 4-week PCT, and you might want a 6-week, but on a first cycle, 4 weeks is plenty. I've got the dosing layout for Clomid, Nova, Aromacin, GW 501, 516, and MK2866, all in those videos, so follow those and check those out. But that's your first cycle. Now, lastly, you finish your cycle, you finish your PCT. You need to give yourself a good 6 weeks. Some people say 4 to 6 weeks. I like to wait 6 weeks to check the numbers on your recovery to really give it a chance to kind of even out and get going. That'll give you a good idea of how you're recovering. And then, how long in between cycles? I always tell people, time on cycle is the time you obviously ran the cycle, but that's also your esters clearing and your PCT. So you did 12 weeks on cycle Weeks 13 and 14 was the ester clearing, and then 15, 16, 17, 18 was your 4-week PCT. So 18 weeks on, the bare minimum you should wait till running your next cycle is 18 weeks. Now, you can run a SARMS bridge in between cycles. I've done videos on those, but time on equals time off. So that is the full rundown of how to run your first cycle properly, the right way, or at least the way that I recommend, that I believe is the safest way. Some people may totally disagree with me, and that's fine. I am only here to give humble opinions that I've learned and observed over the last decade, actually quite longer than that. I shouldn't say decade. It's been more like 2 decades. So the more coaching that I've done has been over the past decade as opposed to the more studying, which was really the first decade. But the more hands-on, so I'll just say decade, because that's where I've really learned and dialed these things in that I'm giving you and providing you. But it's damn near half my life worth of study. So I don't know everything. I really don't. I don't claim to. That's why I study every single day still. But I will tell you, I've got a good grasp on this one, and I believe this is the best way to get yourself going in the right direction and start this out properly. And I believe gives you a better chance at longevity and health overall. But that's my opinion only. So that being said, stay tuned for plenty more to come. Dylan Gemelli signing off.